Hello, everybody. We are Evidence-Based Classroom Solutions, and we also have Sabine from Creative Kinderhouse. So with Evidence-Based Classroom Solutions, that is Lauren and I. We introduced ourselves in the last recording that I hope you guys have watched. So I'm Caitlin Leifert. I am a BCBA and work in public schools, and we also do webinars for parents.
I'm Lauren Ross. I'm a speech therapist and a BCBA, and I also work in public schools.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. I'm Sabine Bilal, the founder and director of Creative Kinderhouse, and I'm very excited to be doing this series of parent webinars in collaboration with Evidence-Based Classroom Solutions.
Yes, we're very excited to collaborate. We think this is going to be very fun. So today we are talking about the Premack principle. And so this is kind of like a fancy way of saying first, then. And if you were with us when we worked every day, you'd hear this constantly. And as parents, you might already do this. And that's the beauty of a lot of the topics we're going to be talking about for this webinar series, is a lot of the times you're doing a lot of these things. We're just giving you tricks and kind of hints and tips to kind of refine it and to make it work a little better. So it actually worked. So the thing is about Premack principle is if it's done correctly, this is so powerful. It really does work. And we're going to get into all of the details in just a second. All right, so this will probably come up in a lot of our upcoming webinars. We reference this a whole lot. So these are the ABCs of behavior, and they are antecedent, behavior, and consequence. And Lauren, can you give us a rundown of each one?
Yeah, so antecedent, that's mainly where we're going to be working for Premack principle. It is what's happening before and what we can do to make sure the behavior is the behavior we want and the behavior we target. And the consequence is success for both ourselves and primarily we want for our kids and for our students that we work with. So we need to look at all three of these different contingencies to make sure we demonstrate success. So we see this in all different ways with setting up different things for communication, making sure they're able to communicate, and also just setting up different things for basic life stuff like tying shoes, going to the bathroom. It's across all different spans of life.
That's right. So I guess let's get into an example, right? Sabine, did you have one?
No, why don't you go ahead, just share an example. I think that'll clarify the concept for our parents.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I think it's a great idea. Let's just give you guys an example. So let's start. I honestly usually look at the behavior first. I know it's in the middle. I know it's not first, but that helps my brain. So you do what you need to do after we explain it. But I like to look at the behavior first. So for an example, let's say your child is screaming, okay? Let's say you're both in the kitchen and you're making a snack or a sandwich and your kid is just like, Mom or Dad, you know, they're yelling at you, right? And you're losing your mind because your kids are yelling.
This sounds very typical. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you've successfully been able to like tune it out, right?
Yeah.
You're probably pros at tuning out yelling, but you still know it's happening. So let's say the specific behavior we're looking at is your child screaming. So let's look at the A, which is the antecedent, which Lauren told us is right before the behavior. And we're going to then look at the C, which is what comes immediately after the behavior. So the antecedent for the child screaming might be, let's say you took a toy away, right? So it's snack time, right? But in order to eat our snack, as a parent, you're like, well, you're not going to play with this while you're eating, right? We want you to eat in the kitchen. Toys are going to stay in your room.
And
so
have germy toys.
It's right. Right. So you're like, no, you took the toy away. It's snack time. You walk in the kitchen, your kid's just following you screaming. Okay. So right before the screaming, you took a toy away. That is the antecedent condition. So that is our A of our ABCs. So A, parent takes toy away. B, the behavior is screaming. And then C, it could be anything. So we either you could give the toy back, right? And that would kind of stop the crying. But if we give the toy back, what have we taught the kid? What have we taught your child?
It's what we don't want them to learn. That's what we're teaching them. Then
this is a non-example, by the way. You're right. We don't want to just give them the toy back to stop screaming, because they learn that, oh, if I cry after my dad takes my toy away, I get it back if I cry enough, right? And then sometimes we accidentally reinforce things that we don't want to happen. So Sabine, what would be like a better way to handle this? What do you think a better consequence would be in this scenario? What do we think?
Before that, I just wanted to add that I'm a parent myself, and a lot of times, like, I do this. I'm at fault. I know
Out of survival, probably.
I can't take it anymore. So I'm just like,
Here. Right.
Instead of following through and saying, I should actually follow through and say, no, finish your food or finish your snack, then you will get the toy. So,
yeah, this isn't easy by any means.
No, and I think a lot of times we end up reinforcing things that we don't want, and it's weighing out the pros and cons.
Correct. Right. So what do we want tomorrow to look like, right? What do we want next week to look like? Right.
Exactly.
So with these I know we have to choose our battles, right? As parents, I'm sure you understand that you have to choose your battles, right? With what things are worth hearing and crying over, right? So another consequence could be, so let's go over it again. Let's pick a different scenario. So A, I take the toy away. B, kid is screaming. And C, let's say I ask them what they want. And instead of just giving it to them, because you're a parent, you know what they want their toy. But maybe you could ask them what they want and see if they can respond to you in a way that's not crying and yelling, right? It can use this Premack principle thing, this first then. You can be like, well, first snack, then you get back to your toy, right? Exactly. So we want to reward good behavior, right? So if we give them an option, they're probably more likely to do that. Like, oh, okay, so I'm going to get it back. I just have to eat my snack first, right?
Yeah,
and
first, then toy.
That's right. And so a word we use a lot is priming. And that's what we're using with using this first then business, right? We're priming our kids. We're saying, hey, first this, then this. So we do this with ourselves all the time. But we have to teach our kids how to do this, right? And they pick it up really fast. And I think another important thing with this first then language, and we're going to get more into first then in just a second, but the thing is with first then, if you use that language over and over and over again consistently, if both parents or guardians or even siblings are using first then on a regular basis, it's going to generalize. So if they're hearing that at school and at home, it's probably going to work better, right? And they're going to know what's coming next. Who doesn't like to know what's coming next? Especially kids with autism, right? They like their structure for the most part. A lot of kids like to hear, okay, this is what's happening. And we can even have visuals, which we will get into.
Katie, I just had a question. Maybe you could elaborate on this. So a lot of times, parents sometimes think that by saying first this and then that and offering something, you're sort of bribing the children.
Yeah, it's a great point. So I think
beautiful point.
Yes, and I think we do a whole webinar on reinforcement. I think we totally should do that next. But yeah, reinforcement totally plays a huge role in first then, because just like you said, it's a bribe. It is different than a bribe, which I'll talk about in a second. But we have to make sure the reward is worth them doing it, right? If we're saying first snack, then toy, or first snack, then work, it's, we have that then part has to be something motivating and reinforcing so that they'll do it again, right? And it's not a bribe because it's contingent upon a behavior that you want to see, right? So that first ABC example, when we just give the toy back, that's not what we want. We're reinforcing something that wasn't good. That's something we don't want to see, right? But first then is getting a response, or your child is doing a task that you want them to do. And they're not getting it until you see it, right? You're not just giving something to them while they're screaming. First, they have to stop screaming, right? Understand what's happening next, and then we can do it, right? So
yeah, you're controlling when the reinforcement is occurring and the contingency in which the child's able to access it.
Beautifully said. Thank you. That was like a one sentence nice way to put it. Yeah, that was so efficient. Exactly. So yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's going to come up a lot, honestly. I think we kind of throughout the series, we'll touch on that, Sabine. I think we kind of go through that a lot because when you don't understand the A, B's, and C's and kind of reinforcement, that is what it looks like. So we're here to kind of give you a little more detailed information to kind of organize your thoughts about it. So you don't feel like you're bribing your kids. And if you're doing it correctly, it's not a bribe. It's not a bribe. Yes. Because you're getting behaviors that you want out of them and you're reinforcing the good.
And you're shaping their future behavior. The more we're using this and the more they're seeing it, you're seeing that positive behavior over the crying or screaming behaviors.
Exactly. And we have to give them opportunities to exhibit that good behavior, right? And that's just a teaser. We'll get more into that next.
So a common name for the Premack principle, so using first then, is grandma's law. Because I know, at least with a lot of grandmas, especially with mine, it was first do this, then do that. And usually the first do this wasn't something you wanted to do. So in this example, it's first eat your carrots, then cupcake. Once again, we're going back to food because we all love food.
It's very motivating.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't always have to be food. I know with my grandma, she was really big into knitting and sewing. And so it was first finish your knitting or your sewing, and then you get to go outside and play. So stuff that trying to shape that first behavior and then get reinforced. And the immediacy of that is very important.
Yeah, that's a great point. The immediacy bit. Oh, that's so true. So if you're using first then, if you're saying first eat your carrot, then you get this super great cupcake. And they don't get the cupcake till 3 hours later. They might, next time you say first then, they might not do it, right? Because that time, there's too much time in between. So that's really important. And as we talk more about reinforcement and the different kinds and what it kind of really is and give you more examples, it is highly important that it is motivating enough. So like if your child doesn't like cupcakes, this isn't going to work. And if they do like cupcakes and they're not getting it right after their carrot, why do it, right? Exactly. Yeah, it's too long, right? Like and then an example we use a lot to give some perspective to adults. So let's say you don't get a paycheck, or let's say you get a paycheck like once every 3 months, once every 6 months. That's not as reinforcing or motivating as if I'm getting paid every 2 weeks or every month, right? It would feel really stressful to me if I didn't get paid like until 6 months later, right? My work ethic might kind of decrease towards the end because I haven't seen that reward. I haven't gotten that reinforcing, oh, I got paid today, right? And so it's the same for our kids, except it's on shorter bits of time because they're kids, right?
Exactly. We're teaching them behaviors that we want and making sure we see that.
Exactly, because we all had to learn this, right? So even though we use it on a day-to-day basis as adults, it has to be taught, especially our kids with special needs and especially our kids with autism. This stuff has to be taught and heavily reinforced with things that they like, that they find motivating, just like Lauren said earlier. So we kind of shape their future behavior so that we're seeing more of what we want to see moving forward.
Yes.
All right.
So first, just like we've been saying, we have a non-preferred activity. So this, when we do this, we want it ideally to be something our child, our student can do and can independently do. However, that's not always the case. Sometimes we need to do some hand-over-hand modeling. We need to prompt them through this, but we want to make sure they're able to get through it. So it's not like I'm going to tell a child who can't read, say, hey, read this whole chapter book, then we're going to go outside.
Right.
We want them to demonstrate success and to seek success. And so we're adding that in the A portion that we're saying, hey, first do this. And then, so the then is something like we've been saying that's preferred. And we want that to be immediate. Just like Katie was saying, we don't want to wait 6 months. And oftentimes we see parents and teachers set up things like, oh, okay, well, do all this all day. And then at the end, we're going to go outside and have an extra 15 minutes on the playground. And so we want to build it in that it's immediate. So sometimes the end of the day works for some kids, but a lot of kids it doesn't. We want to have that immediate. So even if it's, oh, first we're going to do this quick task, and then you're going to get a minute on the iPad. And we want it to match. So matching law, we want what they're doing first to match the level and the amount of reinforcement they're getting. And a great way to really involve your kids is to give them choice. Who doesn't like having choice, right?
Yeah, you feel more in control when you have choice, right?
Exactly.
It's okay if your kids feel like they're in control, but really you are. And that's kind of hard, right? But it's okay if they think it's actually a good thing, right, for you, if they think they're in control. So giving them that choice that Lauren's talking about can give that to them. And so you might see less maladaptive behaviors, like crying and hitting or whatever, if they feel like they're more in control, like, oh, well, I chose this, right? So
Sabine, what would be some choices that you would give your kids? Like if you wanted them to do a task?
Oh, I would give them some extra screen time, like tea time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe a treat to the ice cream parlor for ice cream.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah, those are both awesome, right? Those are both highly motivating for your kids. So yeah, those are beautiful choices. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about giving a child choice is it can change. So it's like maybe you guys can't go to the ice cream parlor that day and you can say, okay, well, we can't do this. Now these are your choices. And so flipping up those choices. And as we get into the next couple slides, we do see some different beautiful choice options.
That's right. And just as we kind of describe this further, with the choice though, it is highly important that whatever the choices you've chosen, you stick with for that specific moment. Like Lauren was saying, you can switch it. We should vary them moving forward, right? But in that moment, if you've chosen these 3 choices, stick with those, because we want them to feel like they have more control, but we don't actually want to give it to them, right? We don't want them to say, well, I want this, not those things. It's like, nope, these are your choices. If you don't pick in 5 minutes, I will. You know what I mean? So it's okay to put a timer on it. So we have that here. We have our predetermined choices. So, and we use visual timers all the time. And this might really help you as a parent. You might already be doing this. But if you are, maybe you're not using it for these little things, but it could really help. Kids like to see it. And so just like if you're at work and you're looking at the clock, like, oh, I've got 10 more minutes. I can do this, right? 10 more minutes. It's comforting to see it, right? To see how much time you have left before you can go get your reward, which is going home. So,
exactly.
So here we have 3 options, and I really like these pictures because they're just sticky notes, right? Yeah. You don't have to have fancy things from the internet that you've printed out and you've laminated because you're a busy parent. You don't have to have Velcroed things. And teachers do this too. As a teacher, I would use sticky notes as well. Maybe I didn't have my board with me. Like I'd use sticky notes. Also, if your kids are seeing this at school and at home, that's really, really good for you and your teachers, because you're both going to see some growth and some progression at the same time, right?
Yes. And the nice thing about this is
Katie, I had a quick question. So a lot of our parents have children with autism. So some of them must be wondering, I'm sure, that, if they do this the first time, maybe the child doesn't understand it, or the second time they won't understand it. But what advice would you guys have for parents? They should stick with it and keep repeating this?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice I would have and teach, because this has to be taught, right? We can't just put 3 choices in front of them and be like, well, you choose, right?
And a lot of times, the first time you're showing it, the kid will grab all the options. Like, I want them all now.
That's a beautiful point. If it's all laid out in front of them, like, well, I'll take it all. I'll take this toy and this candy and I'm good. Right. It's a beautiful point. So definitely make sure the actual items are actually, so you can have visuals like pictures of things, or you can have the actual items there, but make sure that they can't just grab them, right? That's a good point, because all of a sudden you've lost control and they are in charge of their own reinforcement, which is not what we want. We want you as the parent to have that control.
Yeah, but we also, so the first couple of times that you do this, you want to show them. Maybe you're standing next to the child or over them and saying, oh, you finished this now, like, great job putting on your shoes. Now we get to pick what we're going to do. Do you want to watch TV, go outside, or have candy? And sometimes less talking is more. And just allowing the child to comprehend first visually what's in front of them before we're adding the vocal input. So maybe seeing what the child reaches for and say, oh, you want TV, great, TV. And then setting a timer, they're able to get it. And that might have to happen the first few times.
Absolutely. So I definitely if you're using first then with these choices, I'd start with only two. I'd start with two choices. And B, I think that timer piece is also really important, right? So make sure they're not getting like 2 hours of TV time just for something small, but you can start really small. Start with a task, like a non-preferred task that's really easy. Start with something you know they can do, so they'll reach this reinforcement, they'll reach these fun choices fast. Because whenever you're teaching a new skill, which would be understanding choice and understanding what first then means and understanding that, oh, if I do this, I get this from my parent. Make sure you start small so that they actually get to it. So if you know they can tie their shoes really well, and let's say they've been practicing for like months, right? And you know they've got it, they're proud of themselves, they're like, I'm a big girl, I can tie my shoes, whatever it is. Use that, be like, hey, first tie your shoes, then you get to choose. Even though you know they know how to do it, start with something that's easy for them, and then slowly increase it. And then you can use it for those really hard moments, right? You can use it for like, I want you to clean your room, and they hate it, right? And we'll get into some examples on how to break that up by each room in just a second. But so here we've got a remote, a sticky note it's a visual that symbolizes going outside to play, and then Pez. And so which is like a fun candy. So I think what's important to note here is that we've got that outside sticky note that says play, right? Well, what if it's raining or snowing or like whatever? Like, what if the weather's really bad? You can't go outside, right? So that's where that switching it up comes from. That's where we know we need to vary it. So even though you're going to use these three things this day, tomorrow when it's raining, when you're setting it up, it could be something else. It might be like a different toy that they really like, or like a puzzle with mom, right? If the play piece is really because they want your attention and they want to hang out with you, put another activity in there, right? Like a puzzle or coloring or something that involves
baking together or cooking.
Yeah, something that involves you actually hanging out with your kiddo.
So yeah, a lot of times the function is attention, that they just want adult attention. So finding different ways and different forms, and even things that maybe like little tasks that you're doing around the house, they might find fun.
Exactly, right, exactly. All right. So now we're going to kind of look through different areas of the home, right? So how can we use first then in every single room in your house? Because you can. Because you can. You can use this
like a game show now.
Which door do you want to go through? So because you really can use this everywhere. You can use this when you go out to eat, or you can use this when you're going to the park, right?
So yeah, just giving you lots of different examples for how to use it. So behind door number 1 is our dining room and kitchen.
Exactly.
So Sabine, would you want to come up with a first then?
Yeah, for like the
dining room?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would tell my kids first lay the table, then you'll get the food you prefer. Which would probably be spaghetti or something. Mac and cheese they love, so
same. Yeah, like if you're working on that skill of setting the table, or like putting their plate down. Yeah, that'd be a great first thing. Like first plate down, then we get our mac and cheese, which would be reinforcing to me too. And again, talking about starting small, let's say you know that they are able to put like a fork down, you know that they're able to put their plate down, but let's say you're working on teaching them to set the entire table. What if you want them to set the entire table, but do you start there? Probably not.
Not always, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on your kid. Yeah, and it depends on your kid's functioning level, right? But if your kid's able to kind of, if you know your kid can set the table, but you just haven't gotten there yet, you're having a hard time motivating them to do that, you can start with just one place setting. And then you can start with two. And you're like, oh, I need to set the whole table, right? And then you can teach them to serve it, right? You can do all kinds of things. Yeah. And so if you're plotting in your head as a parent to teach this, right? Plotting's not the best word, but it's kind of what you're doing, right?
Kind of, yeah.
They will do things so that I don't have to, right? So if you're thinking about, well, tomorrow night for dinner, I'm going to make their favorite food. And that, again, it's got to be reinforcing, right? It's got to be motivating. If it's a meal they don't like, well, then I won't set the table and I won't have to eat. Perfect. Win-win. And then your kid's not eating and they're not setting the table, which is not what we want. So what you could do is make sure that it's motivating. Make sure that that food that you're using as the then part, right? First set the table, then mac and cheese. Make sure they love that food. And like Sabine was saying, her kids love mac and cheese. So it's more likely to happen, right? They're more likely to exhibit that behavior you want to see because they want the mac and cheese.
Now, I think a good point to bring up then is like, well, we're not going to make mac and cheese every night. And that's definitely an important takeaway. So what do you think we can do, Katie and Sabine, if we're not making mac and cheese and it's a food they don't like?
So we fade it out, right? What do you think? I think we fade it out. That's a huge point, Lauren. You're so right. We have to fade things out.
Yeah. So like fading out, maybe you make mac and cheese a couple times, or maybe you work on a different skill on the night that you're making something they don't like Brussels sprouts or asparagus.
Right. Or have a little bit of like, at first it's just the whole meal is a massive bowl of wonderful mac and cheese, right? And then the next, maybe not, I don't know your kid, like, whatever you do as a parent, right?
Like.
That sounds good to me. Maybe you lessen, right? Or you add like half their plates of vegetable and then they have a little bit of mac and cheese, right? But we want to start with that super motivating thing. And then like Lauren was getting at, which was brilliant, we want to fade it out, right? We got to fade it out. That's a beautiful point because we want them eventually, the whole goal, right, is to eventually be like, go set the table for dinner. And then they just do it. Right? That sounds like a dream. Right? I know you're like, okay, right? But that's like the end dream, right? So, but you have to start somewhere, and using first then and understanding to start small will eventually you'll fade out the kind of the reinforcement, you'll fade out the mac and cheese, right? And eventually it'll be an easier task for them. But when we're starting a new skill, we're just trying to teach a new skill, you do have to start with a lot of things that they like. But remember to fade it out because again, we don't want our kids to eat mac and cheese and candy every night. That's not good either. So
want to make sure we're putting in some other food groups.
We need some other things, not just like Skittles and mac and cheese. We need sustenance, right? But you have to start somewhere. And it's important to have a plan to fade it out. And
when we fade it out, so can I replace it with something like verbal reinforcement only, where I say good job and that should be enough?
Yes.
Sabine, yes. Another brilliant point. Yeah. So we want to pair, and you're going to hear that word a lot from us. We want to pair kind of social reinforcement, like verbal high fives, tickles, whatever your kid loves. Like if your kid loves like tickles, like go for it. Be like, yes, good job. We want to pair that with like the actual mac and cheese or with the screen time. So like, let's say just like in our previous slide, let's say they chose out of a field, like the 1, 2, 3, let's say they chose, well, I want the iPad. So after they do what you want, you're like, that was awesome. High five, tickle, tickle, and then give them the iPad. Because eventually, like Sabine was getting at, we want to fade out that iPad. We want to fade out. And another way to fade is time. If they get 10 minutes on the iPad, next time they get 8. The next time they get 7, and depending on how your child is doing, you're going to fade. Every kid is different. So you're going to fade that in a way that makes sense, kind of slowly. But yeah, we want to pair it because eventually we want them to be able to set the table and we go, awesome job. And that's enough reinforcement. They're like, Mom said I did a good job, so I'm good. Right? Exactly. Again, it sounds really dreamy and idealistic, but you can get there. It takes time and you've got to start somewhere, right? But that's a brilliant point. We don't want to just give them the iPad or give them the mac and cheese. Like, well, here you go. Sound excited, right? Be like, yes, like kids like that reinforcement from their parent, right? They crave that kind of interaction and that validation. So give it to them because that's going to be your main mode of reinforcing down the line once that skill is already taught.
Yes. Great point. Should we move to the kitchen or to the living room?
We go into the living room. How much time? Yeah, I feel like we are running out of time. Sorry, guys, we get excited. So living room, what do we think?
So I feel like living room is also like an area that a lot of families keep toys in. Mm-hmm. And so this might be something like, hey, first we're going to pick up your toys, then we're going to go outside, or then we're going to watch TV for 5 minutes. So that same principle and just being really excited, like, oh my goodness, we're going to pick up your toys. And it might not start with all the toys that are
right.
I feel like so often with kids, like all the toys come out at once,
right?
But they're not going back all at once. So maybe pick up like first the blocks and then TV's on for 2 minutes. TV off. Oh, now we're going to pick up the dollhouse. Right. TV off. Oh, now we're going to pick up these Legos. There's another toy. So it might be giving that reinforcement in the middle of the activity, the whole thing.
Exactly. And we can make it a game, right? Remember, you can make this as motivating as you can, right? We want them to pick stuff up, but it doesn't mean it can't be fun, right? So we can like make it a game, be like, let's time ourselves to see how fast we can pick these up, right? Make it a game and you're playing too, right? You're teaching them how to pick up their toys, right? So if they see you doing it, like, oh, okay, right? Like this makes sense. This is how I do it, right? And so you can make it a game. You start with 1 or 2 things because it's just like it's overwhelming as an adult to like look at your to-do list and just like freak out because like there's not enough hours in the day. Right? Like, oh my God. Right. So, something that I do on a regular basis is I'll have my like master to-do list, but then I'll have a sticky note like this. It's on my computer. Right. So we have a sticky note that breaks it down. Right. I've got like 4 things on there that's doable today that I know I can get done. Right. So we kind of translate that for our kids. So if they walk into a room, they see tons of toys and you're like, clean it all up or you don't get TV. That's overwhelming. And they might like shut down and cry because I want to cry when I see my to-do list sometimes. So, right. So you got to break it down just like you do for yourself. Your kids need that too. Right. So be like, pick up 3 toys, then a couple minutes of TV. Right. So just like Lauren was saying, timing it's perfect, but let's remember to break it down to begin with. And eventually they'll be able to pick up the whole room. Right.
Yeah. And we want the child to be successful. Like that's the biggest takeaway. We don't want it to be so overwhelming that they shut down. Mm-hmm. And this would also be a really good time to work on like colors and so this is like first pick up all the red toys, then we're going to watch, and this might be a really good thing. Like, oh, I see one over there. I see one here. And it's like, now we're going to pick up the blue toys. Great job. And really using, just like Sabine had mentioned, that verbal praise that we want to also pair with them having success.
Exactly. Bathroom. So this is a source of like stress for a lot of parents, I feel, right, Sabine? We see so many skills that we have to teach here that are not pleasant for a lot of kids. Because if your kid has autism, they might not like getting wet, right? Or they might not like some of the feelings. They might not like brushing their teeth. They may not like the sounds of the toilet flushing. There's a lot of like input. There's a lot of stimuli in bathrooms. and like toothpaste and stuff, like, ugh, but we have to do it, right? So we have to be clean. So we can use first then in the bathroom just so many ways, right? So we want to make it motivating. So let's say your kid really hates to take baths, but like they really need one, right? So first bath, then it could be a story with you afterwards. It could be 5 minutes of screen time. It could be, 5 minutes with your favorite toy before you go to bed. So embed things instead of saying first bath, then bed. Let's say they don't like either of those things. Put something they like in the middle. That then has to be motivating, right? And what better way to make bed motivating if they love stories and reading with mom and dad? Use that, right? First bath, then story with me in bed, and they're already there. Beautiful.
And naturalized.
Right. Tire them out. Right. So yeah, we can use first then in a variety of ways here.
I know toilet training is really big, and that's something we work on all the time. Yeah. And so one thing we often do, and Katie, when her classroom, she was an expert at this.
I had to get there. I had to be.
I would walk into her classroom and the kids were potty training and doing great. And so she would, first bathroom, then we're going to watch your favorite video for a minute outside of the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And so she would watch that, and it was wonderful. The kids were very motivated just to sit on the toilet. And that's really, building in those things to find motivation.
Right. And we have to kind of figure out what works, because specifically in that scenario, I tried strictly primary reinforcers, meaning food, like snacks, like Skittles, like gummies. This one kid loved gummies, but he was getting gummies for all kinds of other things. So like, let's say the reinforcement in the kitchen is mac and cheese. The reinforcement might be different in the bathroom, right? And we don't want them to get sick of something that they like. So you're going to use something different. So I figured out the gummies aren't working for potty time. Like the kid just doesn't care. He's had a lot of gummies throughout the day. He needs something more like it didn't match, right? And it's matching law. We'll get more into that another time, but it's the reinforcement, that motivation, that reward has to match the task. So going to the bathroom was like really a huge struggle. This kid did not want to go to the bathroom. So I used the iPad, like she said. So you have to find out what works, like which reinforcers work.
Yeah, every environment is going to be a little bit different on what reinforcers are going to work and what you're going to see as a great outcome.
That's right.
Look at these messy rooms, y'all.
Love it. So we've all seen this. So a lot like the toys in the living room, here we are.
Yeah.
Because are you overwhelmed? I feel overwhelmed.
I'm very overwhelmed. So growing up, my parents wouldn't let us eat breakfast until we made our bed. So they were doing Premack principle before I can even remember, because it was first make your bed, then you get breakfast. So that might be something good. Or even like first put the pillows on the bed, then we get breakfast, or we get we get to have juice. So
that's right. Break it down, right? If you know that kid's not going to clean that whole room, start with something small. And but yeah, because as a parent, you see this and you're like, oh, well, I could just do this. I could knock this out in an hour and then I feel better. Right. But first, make them do something first, right? Because eventually we want them to be able to do it. So make them do like one or two things that you know they can do, and then give them that praise, that verbal praise, like awesome job. And then that then part, which could be a delicious breakfast, right? So yeah, switch it up, and we got to make sure it's fun.
We want to make sure we have independent children.
Yeah, we have to teach them that. Independence is the goal with this. It really is. So you start somewhere. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. Sabine, how do you motivate your kids to clean their room?
I don't know. My kids are very good at cleaning. Because when I tell them clean, they clean. So
that's awesome. Gone right. Amazing. So that's great. That's a win for Sabine. She's taught her kids how to clean so well. That's amazing. That's wonderful news. So all of our kids have strengths and weaknesses, right? And so if we know it's something that is kind of a weakness or something that they really hate to do or struggle with, make sure we're reinforcing them a little more for those harder things.
Yes.
We as adults need that as well.
Ooh, the car. This
The
can
car.
be tricky sometimes.
Yeah, and now we can add masks, right?
Oh, yes. Look at this,
Mhm.
COVID times.
Yeah. Lauren brought up before we started this, she's like, we could totally work masks into this. Like, yes.
Yeah.
So like, let's say the car is a hard thing. They don't like to wear their seatbelts, or they don't like their car seat, or like their siblings yelling at them or whatever, right? It's like a stressful mess sometimes. So we can use Premack principle, right? First get in seat, then I play your favorite song, right? Like have it ready. Have all these reinforcers, have all of these fun, motivating things ready, because like Lauren said earlier, that immediacy is super important. If they don't get that feedback immediately, you may lose them, right? They may just start screaming again or whatever. So have that song ready or whatever it is, or gummy, or
Or even this might be a time just to have like, it's really good to vary what toys and what stimuli are in your child's environment. So maybe you have a little box. It could be just like a pencil box of little toys they're able to play within the car that, one, aren't going to cause a huge mess, and two, they're not going to have little pieces everywhere. Maybe you have some bricks or like a doll or something there that they're like, oh, first seatbelt, then we get the car toy box. And this might be even good, like if you're taking a bus, any type of transportation, like just having that little thing that they're able to access while they are doing that activity.
That's such a good idea. Also, another good point about having that box is they don't have access to those toys except for when in transit, except for when they're in a car or on the bus, right? So they know, and they have paired, oh, I only get these cool toys if I'm in the car doing what I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
Right.
It could be just as simple as like a crayon and some paper.
Right. And if you're going somewhere fun, that you can totally use that to your advantage, right? So like before you even leave the house, if you're going to like the playground, and they're like stoked about it, they're so excited about it, first mask, first coat, then we go, right? Let's say they really hate wearing their mask. Like, well, we don't get to go to the playground unless it's on. Right.
First mask, then playground.
That's right. Use it. And if those opportunities present themselves where they're super excited about something, dude, get a new task out of them. Get a response out of them that you're having a hard time with, because they're more likely to do it for something they really, really like, right? And we don't want to upset our kids, right? That's not the whole point. But we give them something that matches, they're more likely to do it and learn that, okay, I have to do certain things to get certain things. And that's where that independence comes into play. We're trying to teach them that they have to do, that things have contingencies, right? In order to get what they want, they got to do something. And we want you as a parent to have that control, or their teachers. We want their teachers to have that instructional control. We want them to listen to the right adults in every setting. And everyone using this language, this first then language, this Premack principle language, does that. So, yes. All right, we have gone way over time today. We're so excited for our first webinar that we're just really pumped. So we'll try to keep them to about 20 minutes in the future. But this one is super important. And I think all of these examples are helpful. We hope you do too. So I think give us some feedback. Let us know if there's certain topics you want to hear about, or certain topics you want us to get further into, whether it be reinforcement in general, which we'd love to do, matching law. So there's all kinds of things that we'll present, but we'd love to hear your feedback on.
If you have any questions that you've come up with, please send us an email. We'll hopefully work them into our next round of videos.
That's right. And so I think we have, so you can visit both of our social media platforms, Creative Kinderhouse and us at Evidence-Based Classroom Solutions. We have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So find us. And please, we value your feedback. This is for you guys as parents. We're just excited to be a support system for you guys and a tool. So reach out. We want you guys to guide this. So let us know the things you're struggling with and what we can help with.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.